started. Welcome everybody to tonight's call. This is so cool. There's over 100 people right now in the live Zoom call, and we're just getting started. Now it's at 104, now 105, now 106, and counting. And we have hundreds and probably thousands more that will watch a recording of this call or in one of the restream, maybe in a Facebook community, and watching this call right now. This is really cool. And I just want to take a second to say this is really cool because this time a year ago, I don't know how many people we had on this call. It was a small number. And some of the people that were on this call a year ago are actually here with us tonight. And at least from one of them, we're going to hear a story from somebody that's been on the protocol for over a year now. And the results are truly incredible. We recently did a call where we had 3 people on the call who all talked about how all 3 of them had lost over 100 pounds so far on the protocol. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. That happens with consistency. If you're new here and you don't even know what the protocol is, you're in the right place. We're going to make sure that we explain the protocol very, very carefully. We're also going to make sure that we have time for Q&A, questions and answers, so that if you are struggling or if the results don't seem to be working for you the way they're working for everybody else, we can dig into that and help you get results. We have some medical professionals who join us on these calls, and tonight's guest I'm really, really excited about. I'll introduce him in just a moment. But first, I think it would be good for me to introduce myself. Many of you may be unfamiliar with me and me unfamiliar with you. By the way, if you'd like to familiarize with one another, shoot me a message here in the chat and just tell me your name. If you're new here, write new and tell us where you're tuning in from. Lots of people, I just saw somebody said they're in Kentucky, another person in Louisiana, another person in Utah, I think Florida. We have probably all 50 states represented and some other countries as well, people from Toronto, Ontario, people from Mexico. So let's start just by introducing myself. My name's Trent, and this is me and my dad. This is me and my dad. And 6 years ago, my dad died from stage 4 colon cancer. My dad was my best friend. He was a very, very good man. He was the world's greatest guy, in my opinion, but he may have had the world's worst diet. My dad was a stress eater. And every time work or his personal life would be stressful, he would turn to food. That's how I've been most of my life, a stress eater as well. There are times where I'm eating food and I can't explain why. You ever feel like that? Also, in my family's culture, if you score a goal, you get ice cream. If you score 2 goals, you get 2 scoops of ice cream. Good grades were rewarded with sugar. Accomplishments, achievements were rewarded with sugar. But also bad days were, you had a bad day, son? Let's go get some ice cream. Let's go get donuts, right? And this has created a pattern in me that has been really hard to overcome, where the answer to everything is food, right? When my dad got sick, I got a little bit desperate trying to save my dying father and went down the rabbit hole trying to learn anything I could to potentially save my dying father. Now, when they found my dad's cancer, guys, it was already in his liver, it was in his lungs, it was in lymph nodes, it was everywhere. So I started to read, and I read some really, really awesome research about the things my dad was struggling with, things like prediabetes or insulin resistance. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. I started to read about fasting. I started to read about metabolic health. You see, my dad had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. He had psoriasis all over his body. He was very, very overweight for pretty much all of my adult life. My dad was insulin resistant or pre-diabetic, and my dad was on every medication you could imagine. I mean, when we went and cleaned out his stuff, after he passed, I could not believe dozens and dozens of medications. And so, I just decided, as I learned what I was learning, that I needed to talk about it and share it, because what we're going to talk about tonight could save somebody like my dad. Maybe you have a dad or a mom or a brother or a friend or a loved one, or maybe you yourself are scared and you're not sure what to do about your health. We're going to talk about something that works better than anything I've ever found before. It's completely changed my life, and it works extremely well. It takes a little bit of time, like all good things in life. It takes a little bit of time, It requires a little bit of consistency. And if you're the type of person that is not good at being consistent, if you're the type of person that lacks willpower to follow through, we're going to show you how to make it way, way easier. I struggle with all those things, and this has been easier for me than anything I've ever tried before. So we're going to talk about all of that and more and do some live coaching on tonight's call. But first, I have a very special guest. Now, a year ago, this is somebody that I had on a call like this. And Crystal and I, just so everybody knows, we're strangers. I mean, not anymore. Now I love Crystal, and we're not just strangers anymore. But we were. And Crystal saw me talking about this stuff on TikTok, and she was in a very scary spot with her own health and with her husband's health. And she has completely transformed her life. Crystal's a nurse. Crystal's from Indiana. And Crystal has now, and Crystal, I want to give you lots of credit. You, Crystal, guys, has single-handedly been responsible for hundreds of people getting onto this protocol and changing their lives as well. And so, Crystal, we only have a few minutes, but we want to hear from you. We want an update from you. You're over a year on the protocol now. We want to know how it's going. But first, tell us where you were health-wise, where you were, where your husband was when you guys got started on the protocol.
Thank you, Trent. Yeah, we were both in a scary place. I really felt like I needed gut health, but I also had a lot of inflammation, as you can see on some of my photos and videos. My husband, I was more concerned about him because he looked like your classic heart attack waiting to happen with the big protruding belly that's hard when you press it. And so that's where we were, and our labs were bad. He got a horrible report right about the time I was finding this. And I'm like, he's got to start this. So I was too cheap to purchase it for both of us. And I purchased it for him first. And within 2 weeks, I'm trying to track Trent down to find out how I can get more of this and can I get it at a discount? That's what I wanted to know.
And Crystal, maybe tell us what were some of the things you struggle with. Now, I know as a nurse, your schedule is horrendous and you take care of everybody else in the hospital except for yourself. But what was going on? What were some of your struggles? Was it snacking? Was it overeating? Was it sweet tooth cravings? Was it a combination of things? What were some of your personal struggles?
Well, I had tried everything to lose weight. I have Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And I had really tried everything. I was more of a salt person, not a sweet person. I craved salty things, but I didn't eat that much. I ate very clean to begin with and very low carb for many years, but I could not lose an ounce. Or if I were to lose some weight, 10 pounds would be the most, and I would gain it right back, especially the older I got. So,
And
and then
and Danny, where was Danny at with his health? I think he had some health problems as well.
yeah, he had fatty liver, hypertension. So did I. We both crossed the pre-diabetes range with our blood glucose levels. Um, he probably had less diagnoses than I had. I had like 15 diagnoses, and I had a pill to go with every diagnosis I had.
You were on a total of 15 different medications.
Yes.
Okay, so Crystal, tell everybody, I mean, you've been on this first off, how quickly did it work for you? Did it take some time? Did it happen quickly? And then how's it been now maintaining it for over a year?
Well, as I said, my gut was a total mess. And I truly believe in this system when it comes to my digestive ecosystem has totally rebuilt. My triglycerides have gone from 216 to 69. My HDL went from 60 to 83 now in a year. My LDL went from 144 down to 88. My thyroid antibodies, which is what causes us to flare up. When you have flare ups, you don't forget flare ups. And I haven't had a true flare up since I started this system. And my antibodies for thyroid went from 3,600 down to 400. And in that range, they don't give me a specific number just yet. But I did figure my insulin resistance score and see I had no clue I was insulin resistant. My score was 3.2 and it has come down to 0.8.
Hey
So
now.
the insulin coming down and getting my gut in order has helped tremendously. And it took me about, I mean, I want to say every bit of 6 months to, I thought 2 months in, oh my God, you're doing good. Then 3 months in, then four. But every month I was shocked every time I looked in the mirror, not just at my physical body, but then how I felt too at 54 years old now. Danny, his labs are completely wonderful. He had fatty liver, and his biggest problem was his lipids, of course. They're all in normal range without going through every single one. He's lost 50 pounds. I've lost 58 pounds. His AST was a big one. It was 81, and that was attributable to fatty liver. And his AST went from 81 down to 23 now. So it's in normal range.
Hold on,
So
hold on. So some of what Crystal is saying right now might be nurse language, which to you might sound the same as, Mongolian, right? Or a foreign language. So I want to slow down for a second. What Crystal is saying right now, like, about my mind is blown. So Crystal is somebody that struggled with Hashimoto's, which is a very, very serious thyroid condition. In fact, I know people who have had Hashimoto's that for 10 years, no matter what they tried, they could not get the scale to move in the lower direction. It would only move up, right? Non-alcoholic fatty liver is something that her husband had, right? Crystal was on 15 different medications. And Crystal, how much weight in total have you lost so far?
a total of 58 pounds. I just keep staying at 58, but I'm okay with that. It's been over
Well, you look
32
good.
inches. I've lost over 32 inches. And the biggest thing is the inflammation in my face and my hands, my whole body, the cellular inflammation has all come down.
Okay, so one other thing, because it was a little bit, this may not be intuitive to people. Crystal talked about her insulin resistance score. And guys, if you're on this call, this is a little bit of a detour from what we're normally doing on these calls. But she mentioned something that's quite important about her insulin resistance score. Now, if you've done blood work, just basic blood work, if you've done a lipid panel, you can pretty much determine something that people are referring to as your insulin resistance score. And the way that we calculate that is if you take your triglycerides, right? And Crystal, where were your triglycerides before?
They were at 216.
So they were at 216, right? If you take your triglycerides and you divide it by your HDL cholesterol, and where was your HDL cholesterol, Crystal?
It was at 60.
60, okay. So if you do that math, what does it equal for me, Crystal? Where was your insulin resistance score?
I got like 3.2.
Okay, so let's say 3.2, right? So
Yeah.
if somebody were to have a triglycerides of 100, for example, and we divide that by an HDL of 50, that score would be 2, right? Now, if you do your math on your own personal lab work and your score is 2 or more, you have a problem. If your score is 3 or more, you have a bigger problem. And this is where Crystal was, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If your score is 1.5, that's pretty healthy. If your score is less than 1, that is extremely healthy. So Crystal is saying she went from a 3.2, and now where are you?
A 0.8.
A 0.8. That is incredible. I want to make this clear, and Crystal, we have to move on to the next segment here. I want to
Yeah.
thank you. You
Thank
are
you.
amazing. And thank you for not just coming on tonight's call, which is kind of scary in front of hundreds of strangers. But thanks for sharing your story. You
Thank
you
you.
have really been a blessing in a lot of people's lives, and we love you, Crystal. And I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. This has been a game changer for me, and I will shout it from the rooftops until I die. Okay?
You're the best, Crystal. Thanks so much. Okay, so I want to
Thank you.
say that what Crystal just did, picking her insulin resistance score from a 3.2 to a 0.8, this is not just about losing 58 pounds, which I'm sure Crystal is thrilled that she lost 58 pounds. And we're happy for you, Crystal. We're happy that you got off a dozen medications. We're happy that your husband reversed his non-alcoholic fatty liver. All of this is good. All of this is great. We need to celebrate every little thing of that, right? But when you look at that blood work, when you look at her labs, she probably, and this is an estimate, okay, I'm pulling this kind of out of my rear end, but my guess is that Crystal added 10, maybe 20 years to her life. She will likely live 10 to 20 years longer and better because of 6 months, she said, where she got on this and saw all these changes. Now she's been doing it for a year, and that's just amazing. Okay, we are way over time on the testimonial part of this. I wanted to invite Crystal to give her, over 1 year on the protocol testimonial for everybody that's new to here. But that was just so incredible, and I'm so, so happy for you, Crystal. All right, I need to get things rolling. We have a really special guest for tonight's call. We try to bring on medical professionals because, well, who am I? I'm just a regular guy who has no credentials and I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist, right? But I'm just a guy that likes to geek out over metabolic health. Well, we want to bring some medical professionals to you. And tonight we have a really special man. He's from Arkansas. His name is Dr. Eric Akin. And Dr. Akin is somebody that, you know, he is one of the brightest and most savvy, sharp medical professionals I've ever worked with. I'm very, very impressed by Dr. Akin. And I've asked Dr. Akin, and he is not, I am not paying Dr. Akin. He is volunteering to do this. In fact, I know that there's other things you could be doing on a Wednesday night, but he has chosen to give his, and I have no clue what you bill per hour, but he's giving us time right now where he's going to talk about insulin resistance and about this protocol and about why he personally, as a medical professional, has fallen in love with it. So, Dr. Akin, I'm going to mute myself and take it away.
All right. And so I'm going to try and share my screen here if I can.
Try it again if that didn't work.
Hang on a minute. Let me just look. All right. Here we go. All right. So find this one, and here we go. All right. So my name is Dr. Akin, and thank you for that introduction, Trent. I have a personal story with this system and with the diseases that it has treated and is healing for so many people as well. And so Trent mentioned his father, and my father was a physician. I come from a physician's family, and my dad died from complications of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance causes a constellation of other diseases, and my dad had all of those, and it shortened his life. And so, like Trent, I was also very close to my father. So this product addresses a problem that has a very, close personal significance to me. So I'm going to show you here's my trajectory through this. A few years back, here you can see, and hopefully you can see this well enough, but this is me a few years ago. At about 36% body fat. I started exercising and lost some weight here, but then started regaining it back. You can see the belly coming back there because the hunger started coming back. And the problem was I was never able to unplug from the SAD diet, the standard American diet. And so it wasn't until I found the Feel Great system that it helped me to unplug from this. And the issue was that I was insulin resistant. And that was what was driving my hunger and was what was driving my weight. So I want to talk to you tonight about the problem of insulin resistance. It's a huge problem worldwide and definitely in the United States. So up to 85% of the US is insulin resistant. So it's pervasive throughout our society. And it all starts really for us from our food source. So if you look at our grocery stores, about 74% of all of the food in our grocery stores has some sugar in it, 74% of the groceries. And it is just laden with things that are marketed using the scientific method to make them as addictive as possible. You're up against a $1.5 trillion food industry, and that number is so high to think 1.5 trillion. 1 trillion is 1,000 billions. These numbers are massive. You imagine you're up against an industry that has where money is really not an obstacle, and they are using every means possible to get their food in your mouth. And so the name of the game for them is more calories consumed and longer shelf life. That's what maximizes their dollar. So as a result of this, here's what you've been seeing. In 1965, we're going to start back from 1965. You start seeing these trends of weight gain. So these are the yellow part is overweight, orange is obese, and the red is this extreme obesity. And it used to be that there was very, very few people in the extreme obesity category. And notice how the yellow phase here is not getting bigger. The percentage of people overweight versus obese or extreme obesity hasn't increased, but that's because they are passing through this into these higher weight categories. And as physicians, we like to categorize things because categories give you an idea of how bad things are getting. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, stage 1, 2, 3. And so with obesity, we've done the same. There's overweight, and then there's what we used to call serious obesity, and then there's obesity, and then morbid obesity. And now we have what's called super morbid obesity. And now we have a new category called super morbid obesity. So the trends are not good. And it is largely the source of this is from our food, what we're eating. The diabetes trends are following suit with this. So you're seeing a massive incline in the diabetes trend. So what's happening is when you look at the population as a whole, we're consuming about 5% of our calories from corn, and this is refined corn, okay? So in refined wheat at 19% is coming from refined wheat. This was a surprise to me, only 1% from rice, and about 14.5% from sugar. So all said together, about 40% of our calories that we're consuming are coming from refined carbohydrates. That's way too high. And that is what is driving these trends and these trends. So the issue with this, if we want to get down a little bit to the science, why this is driving disease, is because if you look at wheat, for example, if you look in nature, carbohydrates and fiber always go together. This is the wheat anatomy of a wheat grain. The outer part is the fiber, but we strip all that away. We get rid of the germ too, which is part of the nutrients. And the rest is just cake, okay? So when you eat the cake without the fiber, then it's like giving yourself a direct injection of glucose into your bloodstream. It raises your glucose levels very high, very quick. When you're eating foods like this, refined wheat, corn, white rice, and especially sugar, this little organ right here, the little blue organ that's right above your colon there, it's called the pancreas. It will put out a lot of insulin. And the idea is that insulin will bind to your fat cells and to other cells, other tissues in your body, especially muscle, even your brain. And it will bind to a receptor, allowing a door to open to allow blood sugar to go in. From there, that blood sugar is then converted into fat. And so here's the problem is when you're consuming foods that are very high, and I'm going to try to magnify this a little bit here if I can, but if you're consuming foods that are high in refined carbohydrates, sugar, and so forth, what happens is your blood sugar goes way up, and then the insulin goes way up, and then that brings the blood sugar back down. You end up with a blood sugar curve that looks like this. Sugar goes up, sugar comes back down very fast, and it goes below normal, as you can see right here. When it's below normal, then you get hungry again. So what do? You redose. You get another thing. You get another Snickers bar. You get another piece of bread. And then you're just going through this curve over and over all day long. So what you would rather is that your blood sugar curve looks like this. Not this, this. Not so high. It's slower to climb. And it kind of hangs out a little bit above normal rather than going below normal so you don't get hungry again. This is how you kill the hunger noise, the food noise. So if you keep going through this little curve, though, all day, every day, eventually you start packing the fat into your fat cells. And that poses a number of problems. And so let me just show you. I got this little thing. Hopefully I can show you this. This is a model of the actual insulin receptor. Insulin has bound to the receptor. It's like turning a key on a door. The door opens, it lets the glucose go in the cell here. And so the problem is when the insulin binds to this key, I'll play it again. If it binds to it and over, these doors keys keep disappearing. So every time that insulin binds to the receptor disappears. You're down regulating the receptors. There's not enough receptors to allow all the sugar coming into your bloodstream. So eventually you're becoming insulin resistant like this. You don't have enough receptors. And also there's some things that are happening on the inside of the cell as the cell is becoming more resistant to the effect of insulin because it's being constantly exposed to high levels of insulin that basically makes you not respond to insulin anymore. So the end stage of this is diabetes. You end up with a lot of blood sugar in the bloodstream, and it can't get inside the fat cells or the muscle cells or the brain because the cells are no longer responding to the insulin. So here's the fat distributions. These are where the fat is concentrated here in your thighs, subdermal fat in the thighs and the abdomen. But the dangerous spots where the fat gets concentrated after you become insulin resistant is around your internal organs, what we call the visceral fat or omental fat. So this is fat that's around your intestines. And as you start to pack sugar into this and then it's converted into fat, then you start to get into some serious health problems. This fat will start to put out chemicals that make you even more insulin resistant. So here's the issue with insulin resistance. Here are all of the diseases that insulin resistance causes. And I've highlighted a few of these in red because they constitute these 5 things: cholesterol problems, cardiovascular disease or heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and weight gain. Those 5 things constitute something called the metabolic syndrome. That syndrome, again, that's what killed my dad. He had all 5, and those are a direct response to insulin resistance. Now, you don't have to have all 5 to have the metabolic syndrome. You may not be overweight, but you can still have high blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol problems. You could be on the verge of a heart attack and not even know it. And so they call them the unhealthy lean, I think is how Dr. Robert Lustig refers to them. I've highlighted this other one right here in particular in purple because this, things like Alzheimer's disease, we are now calling this type 3 diabetes because there's such a close link with dementia and insulin resistance or diabetes that they're now calling it type 3 diabetes. But all of these other problems are definitely contributed by insulin resistance. So the problem is high insulin. Insulin is the poison. In diabetes, you might have always thought it's the sugar that's the problem. And it is. High sugar levels that continue to circulate around in your bloodstream will eventually become toxic metabolites that can damage your nerves. They can damage your blood vessels. You have to get the sugar under control for sure. But the high insulin levels are really the problem. So when your body is exposed to high levels of insulin for a long time, it turns on your immune system. Your immune system starts to think there's a problem and it needs to react. So it starts kicking out all of these chemicals like cytokines and bradykinin. These things will start to activate the inflammatory response throughout your body. So your body is now in constant inflammation. In my world as a neurosurgeon, I encounter this in the spine. People come to me with bone spurs in their spine and joint inflammation and pain. And 50% of the patients that I put on the operating table for elective spine surgery are diabetic, and 80% of the rest are insulin resistant. The last 20% are smokers. So there's always an explanation, but I used to think it was mostly to smoking until I started really paying attention to the numbers. I started realizing it's insulin resistance is the main problem with spine pain, joint pain in general. So the solution, I'm going to show you just a few other ancillary diseases that are involved with this. There's fatty liver disease. Once sugar is being packed into the liver over and over, you can result in fatty liver disease. 45% of US adults may have fatty liver disease today. Here's a hair loss pattern that is characteristic of insulin resistance. This is a woman, and obviously women don't typically lose their hair as profoundly as men do. But if you go around somewhere the next time you're at the grocery store or out and about, you notice someone who has this, a female in particular, that has this hair pattern loss right behind the frontal hairline. You start seeing this widening gap. That is the likely insulin resistance pattern. Acanthosis nigricans. This is another condition that is associated with insulin resistance. Finally, skin tags. If you see these skin tags on someone around their neck, on casual observation, they're almost certainly insulin resistant. So the solution to this problem is, first of all, if you're in trouble, you're already in the metabolic syndrome, eliminate the sugar and the refined carbs. You want to bring your total carb intake down to low, like 20 grams, 50 grams a day. Intermittent fasting, which for me, both of these things were impossible until I found the Feel Great system. And once I went on this system, basically I could do both intermittent fasting and do the low carb, and didn't get headaches or feel terrible with it. And here was the end result of that: 15% body fat. I'm on no medications. I'll be 54 next month. And all the inflammation in my body, I was getting inflammation in my fingers, in my ankle. All that's gone. The brain fog is gone. I'm clicking on all cylinders like when I was 16 again. And so it's a massive problem. Many people in the United States and all over the world needing it. And the Feel Great system is the solution to this.
Eric, I absolutely love this was an excellent presentation on insulin resistance. I love the visuals. And I'm going to bring myself back into spotlight here. I want to ask a question, Eric.
Yes.
So, well, first, let me see if I can end the screen share. So I'm ending the screen share, and let's see here. I've got a poll question that I want to ask everybody. So we've never done this before. This is the first time. And unfortunately, all of you that are watching this on Facebook or in other places, you're not going to be able to benefit from this poll. This is a reason to come to our live Zoom call. We do this every week with our professionals. I have a poll question that I'm going to launch here. And while we're waiting for the results to come in from 2 questions. So we've got 2 questions that I'm going to send out. As we're waiting for them, I want to ask Eric a couple of questions. So Eric, you are a brain surgeon.
Sure.
And a lot of people have started talking about Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. What would be your comments on that as a guy that knows more about the brain than just about everybody else on the planet?
I think it absolutely is the most likely. It seems like we're starting to see a preponderance of people with more advanced dementia at an earlier age now. I think I saw a statistic on this that the average person at 75 cannot carry on a conversation with more than one person very easily at all. And so that didn't used to always be the way things were. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, my grandfather could have a conversation with a whole room of people at the same time. But he was living off of food that he basically grew off of his own land. And so I think we're going to see an epidemic of dementia happening at an earlier phase of life, unless we do something to turn this around.
Well, I appreciate that. And, Eric, we're going to have you, if you're willing, we would love to have you back more. That was an excellent presentation. I was sitting there, my mouth open, just watching and learning from you because it was truly so good. So we're going to bring Eric back in just a moment for the Q&A. And thank you so much, Dr. Akin. And I just did something for the first time that I've never done before, which was a poll. And I did this intentionally. Now, for everybody that has not started the protocol yet, if you're not familiar with the protocol, don't worry. We're going to explain how the protocol works in just a moment. And then we're going to open up and do a live Q&A and do some coaching for those of you that are, a few weeks or a few days or a few months on the protocol. But I did this poll. So I wanted to ask the question, what is your immediate goal over the next 90 days? And 60% of the people that have responded to the poll said that their goal, I only gave two options here and they had to only choose one of my options. Option number one was, my goal is to look better in a bathing suit. And option number two is, I want my goal is for my labs to look better for my doctor. And we're about 50-50. We're 60-40. 60% of people said their goal is to look better in a bathing suit. 40% of people said that they really need their labs to look better for their doctor, right? Now, when we show you this protocol, the beauty is you can have both. And we're going to show you how many of us have accomplished this without counting calories, without doing any kind of extreme exercise, without being on an elimination diet or something that's super restrictive, right? So we're going to talk about that. The second thing that I asked in the poll is I said, what is your biggest struggle? And this is like a dead tie, three-way tie. Is it snacking? Is it cravings for the wrong kinds of food, like junk foods and processed foods and sugars and starches and carbs? Or is it overeating? Literally eating past the point of being full, right? Eating too much food. And we are in like a three-way tie. So these poll questions were not very polarizing. We actually have a lot of parity here. Now, if you struggle with any of those things, and if your goal over the next 90 days is to look better in a bathing suit or in your birthday suit, or if your goal is to, that was inappropriate, sorry. Or if your goal is to improve your lab work, we want to show you how you can do both of them. So I want to explain kind of the science behind, not the science, but rather the way that the protocol works. And, Dr. Akin so eloquently articulated that this is something that has worked for him where other things haven't. And it has gotten him through that threshold where he kept getting stuck with just clean eating and exercise, right? Here wondered, it's so interesting how people say just eat less, exercise more, right? Eat clean. What does that even mean? Because one group will tell you eating clean means, don't eat meat. Another group will tell you only eat meat. And then you'll have lots of other groups that tell you everything in between, right? And so it's very confusing. And as Crystal put it, she was eating clean and wasn't getting results. So I want to explain how this protocol works and exactly what we're doing here, all right? As Dr. Akin put it, when we started eating and snacking all the time, when we stopped fasting, and when we started to eat these processed refined carbohydrates, when we started eating only the cake of the rice kernel, that was a really, really great statement, we started to get sick. And when we bring fiber back into the diet and we do a little bit of intermittent fasting, we can get unsick. Okay, now I've got to real fast turn off the whiteboard because I didn't turn that off and it looks like people can mark up the screen right now. So just 1 second and then we'll get back to it. I know nobody means to do that. Sometimes when I share my screen, it makes it possible for people to accidentally write on the screen. So, all right, that is fixed. And let's talk about how this protocol works. So most people are used to eating 3 meals a day, or at least that's how it used to be. Our grandparents ate 3 meals a day, but nowadays most people eat 3 meals a day plus have mini meals throughout the day, right? And so what we're doing on this protocol is, if this is breakfast and later in the day we have our lunch and then we have our dinner, right? What most of us are doing is we are skipping 1 meal per day. And for most people, the easiest meal to skip is breakfast. Now, you could adjust that and modify it for your own personal schedule and whatever, right? But breakfast is the easiest meal to skip. Wait a second. Does that mean I'm going to be starving for the morning? No, you won't be starving. See, when we're fasting, we are not starving. We are just switching fuel sources. Instead of burning food for fuel, our bodies will burn fat for fuel. Our body literally gets calories for energy from fat. And this is why our body stores fat in the first place, right? Is to be a calorie source when food is not available. And so when we skip a meal, we save, whatever we would have spent at Starbucks, right? And we burn our love handles for breakfast. And it may take a couple of days of getting used to, but I mean, just say in the chat. I mean, I want to ask everybody, if you've been following this protocol, how do you feel during the fast? Might have taken you a week or two, or maybe a little longer in some cases to get used to it. But how do you feel during the fast? Do you feel hangry and sluggish and lightheaded? Or do you feel incredibly sharp, productive? I mean, I literally feel smarter. I'm in a better mood when I'm fasting, right? And you can see the comments, right? So this for most people is incredibly difficult because, once you've programmed your body to be carbohydrate addicted and sugar addicted, when there's no carb, when there's no sugar, it will crave something almost like a drug addict, right? But once the body becomes fat adapted and gets used to burning fat for fuel, it's good. I mean, it's got everything it needs right here on the love handle. It's going to go burn that, right? So for most people, this is difficult, but we're going to show you how to make it easy. Then when it's time to eat meals, because of this processed food environment, we are all spiking our blood sugar and then crashing it and then spiking it and then crashing it, like Dr. Eric said. And insulin is just sky high. And so we're becoming insulin resistant. This is why all of us are becoming insulin resistant, right? So in a perfect world, you could bring the fiber back. There would be more vegetables and fruits and seeds and herbs and all those things, right? And so what we've been doing is we've been taking this $5 that you save when you skip a meal, and we're just going to put that to use. I mean, that's $5 that we just created by fasting, right? Out of thin air. We save that money. We're going to take the $5 and we're going to use it to buy some things that will make the fasting and the fiber extremely easy. Okay. And this is how this protocol works. I'll stop sharing my screen just here momentarily. So when we are fasting, we are sipping something that is an extract of the yerba mate plant. It is called Unicity. Looks like this in a packet. I'm the biggest foodie I know. I think about food all the time, unless I'm sipping Unicity, and then I literally forget about food. Now, I have done 24-hour, 72-hour, 120-hour, 5-day fasts with nothing but water and Unicity. It is incredible. I'm not recommending that to everybody, but just, for self-experimentation, I did that. The Unicity does a bunch of other things. It helps with blood pressure, it helps with all kinds of things, but really it allows you to fast without feeling deprived. It is incredible. So we sip this so that fasting is easy and so that I don't cheat, right? Now, sometimes I'll do more than one of these a day. In fact, most days I do 2 to 3 just because I love sipping it. This can be consumed hot or cold, or room temperature, which is what I'm doing right now. I look forward to it every day. It puts me in a fantastic mood and makes fasting easy. Then before our meals, we are taking a blend of different plant fibers. This is a product that's going to change the world. There are more than a dozen clinical studies on it. We have proof that it often works better than medication for a lot of different metabolic health problems, but namely blood sugar control, insulin control, and appetite control. And by simply having this right before eating a meal, before lunch and before dinner, it can literally change the glycemic response that your body experiences as you eat foods. It is like nothing I've ever seen before. There are 5 patents on it. Nobody can copy it. There's it's a nutrition company, a nutraceutical company in the United States. They've now got it available in 60 different countries. You will start seeing this at donut shops, coffee shops, restaurants. It is incredible. Now, I want to give you some proof because, here, I don't want this call to sound like a big commercial for, these supplements, right? So I want to give you some proof, and, I'll even ask for some help as we do this. But Crystal was proof. Eric is proof. I was just at a conference last week with the #1 expert in the world, Dr. Benjamin Bickman, on insulin resistance. He was talking about this Unicity and this balance, right? This fiber and this Unicity. I went on the protocol and it completely changed my life. I mean, my love handles just started to shrink. I need to do an updated picture. I'm looking even better now. I started talking about this on social media, started to get pictures from strangers like Crystal from all over the world, Crystal's husband who reversed his non-alcoholic fatty liver, and we started to get hundreds of these stories. The stories were kind of amazing. If you look right here, Trent, I just got my results. My A1C went from an 8.0 to a 5.3. My primary doctor said I don't have diabetes anymore and I can lose the metformin. My A1C went from a 7.1 to a 5.7. Oops. Feel free to talk about my losses. At 90 days, I was down 34 pounds. Now, I can show you hundreds of these, but that would not be as fun as we got more than 220 people right here on the live call. I want to ask for a favor. If any of you have been on the protocol for a week or a month or a year like Crystal, right? If you have seen a measurable positive improvement, and I don't want you to exaggerate, okay? We don't need to exaggerate. I mean, we have something that is going to change the world, and eventually there's 200 people on this call right now. Eventually there will be 2,000 people on this call every week. So if you or somebody in your household has experienced measurable progress, like Crystal shared her blood work, right? And her weight loss and all that, just put a sentence or two in the chat. And then we're going to open up the call for Q&A. So this is the protocol that we're doing. We're simply, whenever I'm not eating, if I'm trying to stay away from empty calories, from cravings, from junk food, when I want to be burning body fat for fuel, I'm sipping the Unimate. And then when it's time to eat, I will have a packet of the fiber right before I eat. It is that simple. I have not really changed anything else. Now, there's a chance that some people's diet is such that they need to change other things. This is not something that allows us to just eat, 2 pepperoni pizzas for lunch and another 2 pepperoni pizzas for dinner every day and not pay a price for that. This isn't magic. This is science, right? But what happens is when it's time to eat pepperoni pizza, by having 1 or 2 of these before that pizza, my blood sugar doesn't spike the way it otherwise would. My insulin doesn't spike the way it otherwise would. I'm not going to feel like eating an entire pizza, which I've been known to do. And I don't pay an incredibly high price for enjoying pizza from time to time, right? So, okay. Holy cow, there are 131 comments in the chat. I don't think I've ever seen this type of response in my life. This is kind of amazing. Last week, I think we had 81 comments. This is blowing that out of the water. I won't have time to read many. I'm going to read for I'll read for as long as I can, and then we got to turn over to the question and answer. And we always try to end the call right on time, so we'll do that. Okay. I'm lost. Hold on. Let me find them. I got to scroll. They're coming in faster than I can keep up. Here we go. I went to the doctor today to go over my labs. This is Kim Harmon. A1C went from a 6.1 to a 5.4. I'm no longer pre-diabetic. My blood pressure was 118 over 7, or my blood pressure is 118 over 76. My triglycerides went down by about 30 points. All this since mid-September. Somebody said the tea tastes like an Arnold Palmer. I don't know what that is, but sounds delicious. Deborah Saunders says 58 pounds down. My headaches are gone. Deborah, people are asking me how long it took. How long did it take you to lose 58 pounds? I believe Deborah started in September, which would be 6 months, 5 months, 5.5 months. James Austin, my A1C is down to a 4. Damon Cerruti, triglycerides are down to 118. My HDL is rising now, and I've lost 60 pounds, and my brain fog is gone. Yvette Oxford, I've lost 5% of my body weight, and lipid panel looks amazing. John Patterson says, my triglycerides were 498. That's a walking heart attack. Now, 110. My LDL cholesterol was 397. Now it's down to 76. And my A1C went from a 6.2 to a 5. John's a buddy of mine. We've been friends for, 10 plus years, John. How long has it been, JP? I'm so happy for you, man. Love you. Michelle Morgan, 7 months on the protocol. I am down nearly 80 pounds and I've lost 67 inches off my overall body. The pounds are gone. My extreme brain fog and fatigue are gone. My inflammation is dramatically lower. Dwayne McCarver, 3 days, and I'm feeling tons of energy. I love it, Dwayne. Hey, I'm excited for you, man. 3 days in, you're starting to feel good. That's why we call it feel great. Is the first thing most people notice is they feel good. Now, I did not lose any weight at all for the first like 5 weeks. Fortunately, I felt fantastic. Otherwise, I probably would have quit. I mean, what would you do if you were 5 weeks into something and hadn't lost a pound, right? But if you stick with it and are consistent, sometimes people see crazy results in 30 days. Sometimes it takes 60 days, 90 days. I know of a person that I think was on it for almost 8 months, trying to prove the system wrong. And a vet worked really closely with this guy, and now his entire life has changed, and it's just like amazing. So, okay, few more, and then we got to get to the Q&A. My daughter has lost 80 pounds. Debbie Pack-Lark, my daughter has lost 80 pounds and is not pre-diabetic anymore. Eddie says, I do this consistently. In 1 year, I lost 115 pounds. I beat diabetes. I'm off my pain pills and my neuropathy is gone. I'm off my pills. My pain from neuropathy is gone. Excuse me, Eddie. Eddie's got a crazy story, guys. Eddie was on a talk show talking about how his entire life has changed on this protocol. It was excellent. Rod Rutland, my triglycerides dropped from 255 to 143 in a month. I've lost 20 pounds and my uric acid is down. Gina McCarthy lost 38 pounds as of today. No leg pain, no brain fog, no hot flashes. Started October 2nd. I have amazing energy. Jim, I've reversed my type 2 diabetes on this system. So have my mother and my mother-in-law. We are all off of our statin medications as well. Jeff Lanham, my A1C went from a 9.4 to a 5.6 in 4 months, and I've lost 64 pounds. Alan Kashner. Alan was our guest once. Jeff's been our guest too. JP, I need to have you as our guest next week. I want to hear your story, man. Alan says, I was diabetic for 20 years, was on 4 diabetic medications, and my A1C was still too high. On this protocol, I've reversed my type 2 diabetes. I'm off all 4 diabetic medications and my cholesterol medications, and I've lost 72 pounds. Way to go, Alan. Anna Colavita, 7 months on the protocol, no more rheumatoid arthritis, down 20 pounds, no more brain fog, feeling better than I have in years. Farhan Noor, 1 year, I'm down 120 pounds. Guys, there's like 75, probably more comments. Denise, if you were here, would you please screenshot as many of these as possible? I want to make like a collage. We need a collage of this, honey. This is, guys, hey, when we started doing these calls, we said we were going to change the world. And I can't give you better proof than this. This is what it's all about. This is why we do these calls. Thank you, Dr. Akin, for, your contribution to this. And thank you to so many of you who, I mean, if I heard stuff like this, what I'm seeing in the comments right now, I would have been skeptical. I would have said, if this worked, my doctor would be telling me about it, not some random dude named Trent on a Zoom call on a weeknight, right? I would have been extremely skeptical. The truth is, we have all the clinical data. We have all the personal proof, the social proof, and we'll show you that this is different than anything you've ever tried before. In fact, the manufacturer gives a 90-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. You can prove it yourself. Use it properly, be consistent, and it won't let you down. And if you're unsatisfied for any reason, just get a refund. What do you have to lose? Nothing, except for maybe your diabetes, right? I mean, that's what the comments are telling me right now, except for maybe your statin medications. You might lose those. You might lose your migraine headaches, it sounds like. You might lose all these symptoms, these unwanted symptoms of insulin resistance. You might lose those. But, okay, Trent's talking too much. Let me stop. We're going to bring Dr. Eric back for the Q&A. Now, for the Q&A, you can raise your hand, and we will bring you onto the live call. You can also ask a question in the chat. It's really hard for us to see the chat with all the chatter in there. So please raise your hand if you're on the live call and you have a question, and we'll bring it on. Now, I want to say something so that Eric doesn't have to. Although Dr. Akin is a doctor, he is not your doctor. And with medical questions, we have to be very, very careful. We're never going to tell you to do something that is contrary to what your doctor says. If you believe that what you should be doing and what your doctor is telling you are not consistent with one another, you could seek a second opinion, and we have medical professionals that we can refer you to, but we're not going to give medical advice or answer medical questions. We can answer generic questions. We can answer questions about the protocol, the system, and anything else Dr. Eric feels comfortable with. But I just want to make sure I say that to cover Dr. Eric and respect him as a professional. So first question has come in. How about high blood pressure? Vanessa Kilpatrick asked about high blood pressure. There are literally probably 20 comments above about how this has helped with high blood pressure. So the chlorogenic acid in the Unicity, Google this. Google chlorogenic acid for lowering high blood pressure. You'll see everything you need to see. Sipping this is very good for that. Eric, you may have a comment on high blood pressure.
Yeah. So, well, the main thing that's happening there that, you know, when you are insulin resistant, you have high insulin levels. As I mentioned, there inside your blood vessel is a layer of blood vessels called the endothelium. Those cells that are in the innermost part of your blood vessel, they make something called nitric oxide. And when they make that nitric oxide, it diffuses into the middle part of the blood vessel, which is actually kind of a muscular layer that contracts and makes that vessel tighter. And it can't relax and let the vessel be more open if it's not making nitric oxide. And when your insulin levels are too high, then you don't make nitric oxide. The blood vessels stay tight. Your blood pressure stays up. So everybody blames high blood pressure mostly on salt. In fact, right behind me is a national best-selling book, and it blames, just like all the others, it's mostly blamed on salt. And salt has a bearing, but not like sugar, not like carbs do, not like insulin resistance. That is really the root of the problem. Salt is a drop in the bucket compared to this.
Thank you, Dr. Akin. Okay, Wendy McGrath is saying, how do we get a person to be able to work with their doctor to get off their medications? They have my mom on so many diabetic medications. She feels dizzy all the time. She's nauseous all the time. She is about to turn 80, but thinks her doctors just won't let her do it. I guess the question is, how do we safely incorporate this and get her off these insane medications? Do you have a response to that?
What you're going to, there are a lot more physicians that I think are becoming open-minded to this concept. What your physician needs to do is look in the PDR. This product is listed in the PDR, and they can just reference it and then decide how are they going to incorporate. But you may need to insist. Okay, but if your doctor is very dogmatic about this, well, maybe it's time to get somebody who's a little more open-minded. But we have a reference called the PDR that we look up drugs in. This nutraceutical system is actually listed in that. Your doctor can look at that and then make a decision about how this should be incorporated. If they're not open-minded to it, I really would seriously consider finding somebody a bit more open-minded.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. And I'll also say that, hey, when you go on the protocol, your blood sugar is likely to start coming down. And if you're taking medication that artificially puts it down even lower, then blood sugar can get too low. And so, but this is something to celebrate, because this is an opportunity to work with your doctor to reduce or perhaps even eliminate the medication. And that's the goal, right? So, that could be done with your doctor and check with your doctor. And like Eric said, if you need a second opinion, get a second opinion. Not a fan of flavored beverages. What would be the best flavor? The lemon is the most popular on the Unicity. If you like ginger, lemon ginger is my favorite, but lemon's the most popular. Dr. Eric and Trent like the lemon ginger. And then the orange balance is the most popular. There's another flavor that I believe is coming back soon that's called apple, and I like the apple flavor too, but the orange is fantastic. So go with the orange. That's probably the safest one. Okay. We're going to try to get one more question. I'm closing in on 30 days and I haven't noticed any weight loss. I've had other victories. I'm just wondering when people should start to notice weight loss.
So it depends on what your circumstances, where you're starting from. And so who asked that question actually?
I scrolled past it. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Oh, it's okay. So,
Renee.
So I'll tell you that there's a wide spectrum. For me, for example, the weight loss started within the first week. It was immediate, but I was also physiologically primed. I'd been exercising this whole time. In fact, I was trying to outrun my diet. I was gaining a pound a month, so I started running and lifting weights harder and longer. So when I actually got on the system and then was able to convert to intermittent fasting and a carbohydrate restriction regimen, the results were immediate. But then my sister, who is smack dab in the middle of menopause, she got on it, and it took about 4.5 months before she started moving the needle. But when it moved, now a year out, she's wearing clothes that she wore in her 20s, right before she got married to the biggest mistake of her life, and she looks fantastic. And so she's, and she couldn't be happier with the results. She's 60 years old, no medicines, and looks like she did when she was in her 20s. So it may take a few months, but you have to understand, this is not a pharmaceutical. This is a nutraceutical. And what it's doing is unwinding what has been wound up naturally. Okay. It's unwinding it naturally rather than some, artificial manipulation. And for some people that just may take a minute, just wait for it. If you go on this regimen, go on to carbohydrate restriction, your body will eventually have no choice. It'll just change.
And as we wrap up the call, and thank you, Dr. Eric, thank you, Crystal. Amazing contributions from both of you. We really, really appreciate it. As we wrap up the call, I just want to echo what Eric just said. And this is cost neutral. I mean, if you're worried about the cost of potentially doing it for a few months before seeing results, do the math on the budget. It will be cost neutral or save you money. But for me, it took a little bit more time than it takes most people to see results. The first thing I noticed is I started feeling better. There was a little bit of an adjustment period where my gut was getting used to the fiber, and just I had not done any fasting, and so there was a little bit of an adjustment period. But once I got through that, it got measurably better. And now, over a year and a half, coming up on 2 years of being consistently following the protocol, I feel fantastic. My blood works great, and I love it. So you guys are the best. Thanks so much for being on this call. If you have a loved one that's struggling with their metabolic health, invite them to next Wednesday's call, and they will thank you later. Thank you, Dr. Eric. Thank you, Nurse Crystal Griffin. You guys are the best. We'll see you.